In this video we're going to look at how to create revolves using the SOLIDWORKS functions and consider some parameters and equations for varying the length and width of our sketches, as well as looking how to change some of the basic defaults within SOLIDWORKS. So let's start with making a new part. So new part, okay. And let's go ahead and make a sketch on the front plane. So I'm going to right click on the front plane and do a new sketch. What I want to do this time is make a revolve feature. So the first thing I need with a revolve is a closed profile. So to do that, let's look at the different types of rectangles that we have. The standard rectangle that most people use starting off the bat is a corner rectangle. I almost always prefer to use a center rectangle because I chose the center rectangle tool, and I'm going to drop the center and move out from there. The reason I like using a center rectangle tool is it automatically adds a center point for the rectangle. So let me hit escape, and as we discussed last time, it's convenient to add relations. So this time, instead of going to the add relations tool, a shortcut is just to click on one of the points I'm interested in and then holding down Control and clicking on another point, and automatically, if there are add relations that are possible, they'll pop up here on the left hand side. I want these 2 points to be horizontal to each other. What that means is if I grab this point, I don't want it to be able to go up. So we've got that constrained now. And same thing with the dimensions tool. I can go to smart dimensions, but it's faster if I hold the right click down and move my mouse a little bit. And there are several different tools. There are 4 of them, and the top one is the dimension tool. So I'll just slide up until I collect that dimension tool. I can click the top line. Let's let this be 3 inches. And let's let this one be 1.5 inches. And then let's let our distance from the origin to this first point be 4 inches. I'm going to zoom out a little bit so we can get the whole thing here on the screen. Now this is what I want to rotate, and it would best make sense to be rotating it about the center. So to create an axis about which to rotate, let's choose a line, and we're going to let this be for construction and infinite length. So I'll choose the origin now, and I'm going to snap it vertical, and OK. Let me hit escape to get out of the line command tool. Everything is fully defined, and so we're ready to do our rotate. I'm going to exit the sketch, and I'm going to hold the middle mouse button down so I can see what's going on in 3D a little bit. Get it out of plane. Let's go to the Features tab, and let's see, I'm going to make sure I do not have my sketch selected. So I'm hitting escape to make sure nothing is selected over here. And I'll click the Revolve tool, and it asks me I need a plane on which the feature exists, and I also it's asking me to identify the sketch that I need. So let me highlight that. Sketch 1 is the one we're interested in. And then it also needs an axis of rotation. Because I drew that line, I can grab it. So I have the highlighter selected to be able to grab something, and then I'll click on that line, and now we have our revolve tool. So I'll click OK. That makes the revolve. Now this is interesting, and while we're here, there's a couple things I want to show. First off is, last time we looked at the way you create new sketches. So if I go to a new sketch here, I have a new sketch, but I'm not looking at it directly. So maybe almost always when I'm making a sketch, I'm really wanting to look at it orthogonally after I create the sketch. So I'm going to exit the sketch tool. So I'm out of the sketch. I'm going to go back to a 90-degree or something out of plane view, and we're going to take a look at some of the options that we can use to modify that. So if I click the options dialog box and let's look down through here. In the sketch tab, one of the very first check mark here is auto rotate view normal to sketch plane on sketch creation. I'm going to check that. That's what I would prefer. Then let's take a look at some of the other ones that are here. Okay, so if your computer includes touch, there might be some options here for what happens if you rotate your screen around. There are your file locations. This is the location for the templates as well as a lot of other things. This is a good place to recognize. The performance tab can be useful, especially if you're having graphics card issues. This would be some places where you can change your graphics settings. And there are several others here. So this is an important place to go. Notice the system options contains things that are in general for all SOLIDWORKS files. The document properties have to do with this particular file. So for instance, units, the particular file we have open is on inch, pound, second. And the decimal places that are displayed. So we can change all of those types of things. So I'm going to click OK. And now when I create a new sketch, if I right click here and do a new sketch again, now it's going to swing normal the way I would prefer to do it anyway. So we've got that taken care of. I'm going to hit escape. The other thing is when I right click there were those 4 buttons. If I go to the drop down by the options and we're going to go to customize and mouse gestures, I'm going to switch it to an 8 gesture mouse and click OK. Now when we right click and move, there are 8 different options. I don't know that I use the ones within the sketch terribly frequently. There definitely are some shortcuts here. But if I go to within the sketch now and right click, I've got a lot more options. So there's convert entities. So there's a lot of shortcuts right here that make our work within the SOLIDWORKS environment much faster. Okay, the final thing I want to discuss, I'm going to cancel this sketch. So discard, changes, and exit is to, we're going to go modify this sketch. So right click on the sketch, go back into edit sketch, and right click on the sketch, and let's look at it normally. So we're back here. What I'd really like to do is control the shape of this completely from this first entry that we, or let's do the second entry that we put in. So I'm going to click on the 1.5 inches. Double click so I can get into where I'm typing the sketch, and I'm going to call this height. So I'm going to type in H-E-I-G-H-T. Notice it's yellow. Yellow means we're about to create a new variable, so I'll hit enter and it asks me do I want to create a new global variable named height. Yes, I do. And that new global variable is equal to 1.5. Now the other thing I'm interested in doing is, let's take this top dimension, this 3 inches, and I'm going to say equal, and I'm going to start typing in the word height, and notice it's yellow because it's going to let me create a new variable. But what I want to do this time is use this variable we've already created. So I'll click on it, and notice it's in quotation marks, and we'll say times 2. Hit enter. There's a symbol that changed that shows an equal sign, and I'll click the check mark, and we now have the knowledge that this is a relation. Okay. The other thing, let's let this 4 inches be 3 times that value. So equals 3 times . So I wrote the quotations myself this time, and when I hit enter, it makes it 3 times the value. So now before we make any changes, notice there's some red summation signs to let me know that these are driven variables. When I exit the sketch, we make all of our changes, and a new folder has appeared in the document tree over here, and it is that there is now an equation called height. I'm going to right click on equations and do manage equations. Now this is kind of interesting. I have a variable called height. It's equal to 1.5. I have two equations in D1 and D3 at sketch 1. I have the equations, and remember these are the equations we typed in. What's interesting here is the original one is not considered a variable, so I need to go back through and add that. So first off, let's change this to 2 inches just to see what happens. And I'm going to click the automatically rebuild tab. Let's do it again, 2 inches. When I hit tab, it should rebuild it. There it is. It's scaled up. And we'll click OK. What did not scale up is the thickness. So if I go back into the sketch and I'm editing the sketch, this remained at 1.5. So if I want this to be the original, what I'll need to go back in there is go into it and say equals, and this time we'll do it a third way. We'll drop down to the global variables that I've already created. Notice there are all kinds of functions and file properties that I can use for these dimensions. We're going to stick with height and click OK. And now everything is a function of that height. So if I click OK, we're finished.